What is up, everyone, and welcome back to our SlabStox live show here on Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm back this week, and we have got a lot to talk about because the most expensive sports card sale, actually sports item sale of all time, occurred this weekend. I stayed up until like after 1 a.m. Central Time, 2 a.m. Eastern Time to see the Mantle sale go down. The 1952 SGC 9.5 Mint Plus, the quote finest known example. There's some writing behind that with back in the day when it was discovered and stuff, like the cleanest copy supposedly, found and all that different good stuff. But we have a great big discussion today to talk about the sale, maybe the ripple effect it'll have on the market in the hobby, and then also looking at the differences in vintage cards between SGC and PSA. There's been a lot of stuff that's been said after this sale or even leading up to the sale about SGC's standing in the market compared to PSA, both for vintage and for modern. Videos circulating either SGC, it's going to close the gap on PSA in both modern and vintage, or it's just going to be level in vintage than modern. It might drag behind the 10 values a little bit behind PSA, whatever it might be. We'll discuss all that today on the show and also a lot more. But Nate, how's it going?
It is good. It is good. It's a nice day out. We're talking big sales. What more could you want?
Yeah, exactly. What's
Arsenal's
up,
in
Tech?
first place. The Brewers have won 2 games in a row.
Brewers 2 games in a row, man. If Yelich can keep up that nice swing, maybe we have a chance to get in
Hey,
that wild card.
if he can hit a home run every game, we're good.
I think so. I think so as well. How we doing, Tech, and how we doing, Sam? We have a comment right away in from Sam, actually from 12:20 p.m. today. Sam was very early to make sure this comment was known, with saying it won't affect the market at all, referring to the Mantle 9.5 sale. It's so far out of touch and reach that it's not going to change any sentiment at all in the market. I would have to agree in a general sense, like, that sale of the Mantle 9.5, like, yes, how many people have got 13 million to drop on a sports card? Not many at all. And how many will drop that much? Not many at all. However, I think there is some things to be said for maybe what that sale and the connections to that sale and how it might affect the market. Now, we're not going to sit here and say, oh, the highest sports card sale of all time happened, so everything's going to go up in value, or all of you should run to grab all your, graded vintage cards right now, or even grab your modern graded cards right now. Not what we're going to do today at all. It's just going to be a look at sales values now versus 6 months ago, beginning of the year, 2 months ago, a bunch of different things, and talk about what we see might happen. Also, hear from you all and what you all think too. Just like that great comment from Sam. So, Sam, thanks for anyone throughout tonight's stream. Feel free to drop comments and we'll read them off and talk about them. Matthew first is wondering how Nate is liking the West Coast.
It's pretty nice. My wife and I went for a walk the other day, and there was mountains in there, or hills, mountains in the background. The weather was nice. The river we were walking by, crystal clear. So you don't get any of those things in Wisconsin. At least the rivers I've been by have not been crystal clear, and there's no mountains. There's hills. Wisconsin is definitely hilly, but no mountains. So I've been enjoying that.
Nate, well, I actually did see some mountains this weekend, and it was actually some SGC slab mountains in the basement here. How many slabs came back
Ain't
from
that the
the
truth?
SlabStox grading service, which we just kicked off in August with the August National promo. And there's actually now 2 days left to make put submissions through on our online platform. If you go to slabstox.com/grading, looking at the screen here, all the different promo codes are available right now through the end of August. Only all the codes are deactivated after August 31st, the last day in August. If you are listening on podcasts right now, feel free to look up our account on Instagram at SlabStox to see the promo codes. And we had a massive turnout for the August submission. So many cards were submitted. And now that Mantle 9.5 sold, which was huge as well. So I think a lot of people are gravitating towards not only the service with us because it's the lowest cost you can find, especially with the promo, but the promo is done after August. But even going forward, we will be sending out submissions on the 15th and the 30th of every month. Cards need to be received in hand the day prior, meaning the 14th or the 29th, to make that given submission cutoff. It's been a lot of cards so far. Hopefully it continues. A lot of people are enjoying grading with SGC. Not only SGC, but sending through our service. $23 per card is the lowest you'll be able to find. It's a huge price break from SGC's website, and the turnaround times are super fast. Our last one was 1,000 cards. Was 5 business days, graded and shipped back to us in that amount of time. Hopefully we see the same results here, coming up with that even bigger submission for the 30th group. But feel free, like I said, hop on. Here's a little picture of the platform, slabstox.com/grading. Throw your order through, and you got a couple days left to do that with the promo. But like I said, if you don't have your cards right now, no stress, because it'll be going it'll still be going SlabStox grading with SGC going forward. You just need to do it in the next couple days for the promo, but no rush if you cannot make it in. We got to talk about a few sales from last night's PWCC weekly auction first before getting into the ripple effects of the mantle and everything. There were some monsters that sold last night. 3 cards over 25K in a PWCC weekly auction. That's normally numbers you see from a premier auction. Those are some big sales last night, Nate.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. And can't believe Pokemon was number one.
I know,
I'm
number
still not
one.
100% sure what that card is.
Yeah,
And
so I
don't understand why it says cut at the top.
Yeah, I was very confused at first too. It doesn't even say Pokemon on the label actually. So what this is right here is the certification from PSA on this label is just for the auto. They're not even certifying that that card is like a legit card released from Pokemon. What I think it is I read this up on some of the PWCC content they put out for this this set that they sold. It was like 5 different cards like this. These are either creators of the illustrations, the designers, the trading card game. 5 of them were sold last night. This one is from Ken Sugimori, who is actually quote the father of Pokemon, I heard, and was the original designer and illustrator for the trading card game. And it's a sick auto. It's a sick sketch of Pokemon. It is an artist sketch cut, as Tech was saying. And what this was it was like handed out at the 2004 World Championships for Pokemon or something, blank ones, and then they drew on it, signed it, and then it got authenticated here with the auto grade as a real auto. And sold for $33,000 last night. And we asked the audience, what was the best bang for the buck, and it ended up being the Kobe Flawless in their opinion, which makes sense. Sports card audience. Although 30% of the votes for the Pikachu is pretty big, I have to say, Nate. Like, people knew what this thing was,
They knew better than me, that's for sure.
For sure. And then Tua, though, not very surprising, a $25,000 Tua card coming in at the lowest votes there at 8%. That was actually the second one we've seen sold in now 1 month, as a PSA 9 sold for $48,000 last month. That's nearly a double difference between BGS 8.5 and a PSA 9. It makes sense, kind of. Like, that's a ton of money once you take into account doubling a $25,000 card. But I imagine that, to get an 8.5 to move to a PSA 9 is rather extremely difficult. So it's probably like a PSA 8 or maybe worse. So I can see why there's a huge difference in price. People want their best condition cards for their best cards in the set type of deal, and they'll pay up for it, no doubt about it. This was a fun one, I thought. Nate put together this little baseball, 1 up, 1 down. Nate, why don't you explain this one real quick?
Yeah. So we've got on the left side Vlad Guerrero Jr. To be fair, just a little bit cheating. There was a same card sold on a different website. And for the same price, $18,000, but about a month prior, maybe a month and a couple weeks prior, one had sold $16,800, and this Vlad, $18,000. So up 7% from that previous sale, even if it was, slightly cherry picking on my end. And then you've got Mike Trout Topps update diamond anniversary over here, PSA 10, and that sold at $8,100. And prices for these were all over the place. I could have chosen ones that sold for higher. I could have chosen ones that sold for closer. So I tried to get in the middle, and 2-month trend here dropped 20%. But there was a couple other in there that further drop. And I don't know if there's any this low. This was definitely the lowest. There were some in the 8,000s in the last couple months, but there was also multiple over 10.
Got you. And this was a fun question I was posed on Instagram. Which would you rather have? And if you're watching right now, please feel free to drop a comment too and give your thoughts. Would you rather have one Vladimir Guerrero first Bowman Chrome Gold Auto out of 50 BGS 9.5 at an $18,000 valuation? Or would you rather have 2 of these Trout Diamond Anniversary Rookie PSA 10s at an $8,100 valuation and $1,800 in cash? This time I will let you get away with the taking the cash too, Nate. In your opinion, what's the play here? 56% of the votes that give me the 2 Trouts and the cash.
Yeah, definitely give me the 2 Trouts and the cash. Now,
what if Vlad bounces back to like that MVP caliber? I mean, we're talking maybe like $40,000 card.
That is the thing. The 2 Trouts and the cash is safer, but obviously if Vlad has another 1,000 OPS year and is MVP caliber again, and it's not like Vlad's been bad this year. He was a little bit disappointing for me for a while, and he went on a tear. in the last month and some change, and he is no longer disappointing. Um, Closing in on 30 home runs, but it's still, like an 850 OPS this year, which you're expecting better things from a guy who had 1,000 OPS. So yeah, huge upside if he bounces back to that 1,000 OPS.
And if you look at Aaron Judge, he had huge rookie season, up in the MVP voting, and then injury seasons, and then perform well. He performed well when he was playing, but now with this massive year for Judge, years later, Judge is hitting all-time high sales once again after he had a couple of years where prices dropped, wasn't playing as much, wasn't as consistent. So I do, for my personal take, it'd be nice to have $1,800 in cash, go buy whatever you want with that. But honestly, Nate, I think the upside is so high with the Vlad compared to the Trouts. Those Trouts might drop for the next 2 years, year or 6 months. So I would go with the Vlad in my opinion. And then if you were looking to spend on a budget last night, there were some nice little deals you could get. Either between that Tom Brady Immaculate right there, that Mark Vientos PSA 9. That's a first Bowman for $78.
Yeah, can you believe that?
It's a pretty nice little deal there. Why didn't we get that?
I mean, I
I'm just
didn't even know it was there's so many cards in the auction, it's hard to see them all.
Right, exactly. Which is if you put in some time, you can find some deals. It's well worth it. All right, moving on here. Time to get into the Mantle discussion. First of all, if you're watching, feel free to just comment your thoughts on the final sale price. In general, I mean, obviously 12.6 million is a lot for two reasons. One, it's just a ton of money, but two, it's significant because this is the first sports card to ever sell for publicly. Even though who knows if there's been any to sell for over privately, we haven't heard about it all. For over $10 million, hitting the 8-figure mark for the first time ever, the 9.5 min plus from the Mickey Mantle, and that beat out the previous top item, which was a Diego Maradona. This is the game used jersey from his Hand of God goal, which is actually insane. This sold for 9.8 million, I think, or 9.2 million 6 months ago, a year ago, somewhere in that range. And it's a huge, huge, huge historic piece. Obviously, this is a true one of one, which begs the question, if it's investment sake, Nate, investment. This is not, you'd like cards more. I like cards more. Maybe you like game used jerseys more, whatever it is. Just take that out of the picture, what you would like more. But from a purely like buy this 30 years from now, someone is going to walk up and maybe pay you more. Which one would you rather sink nearly $10 million in? A one of one game worn complete jersey of Maradona, one of the most famous soccer moments of all time, or a Mickey Mantle 9.5 min plus, which looks really great. It's not the finest known example, which I've seen some posts. Jason from OTI Sports says he's seen the 3 other PSA 10s in hand, and this one is just as nice as the 3 PSA 10s. One of this card or the jersey.
Well, I'm pretty biased as a as a significantly higher baseball fan to soccer fan, right?
Yeah, but let's take all bias, Nate.
I know. When you say one of one jersey, what does that mean?
What I'm trying to say is you're not going to get another game worn jersey of Maradona from the Hand of God goal. Like you can find another 52 gem mint to mint plus condition Mantle.
I mean, there's probably mantles out there that nobody's seen that are in good condition.
Maybe not this good, but you're right. There's a lot, there's
that being said, if you know cards or even if you don't know cards, you've probably seen that mantle somewhere. If you don't know soccer, you might not even ever heard of Diego Maradona. Because you know why I know that? Because you're looking at a guy who hadn't heard of him like 2 years ago in his entire life.
There's some arguments here. One from Matthew. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because it's like I didn't know soccer. I'd never heard of the guy. I still have never seen the Hand of God goal.
Look that up.
But I do know cards, and even when I was a kid, I would have known what this card looked like.
Mm-hmm. You're just saying that it can maybe touch more Americans for sure, obviously, but at least from a recognizable standpoint, the Mantle 52, I agree with you. Like iconic wise, like from the card perspective, this is so important. It's very hard to know. Like I feel like that you're gonna have a bigger buying base with the Mantle for sure, but you find one person who needs to have the most important soccer jersey of all time, or one of the most, and maybe they buy this for a ridiculous amount of money for a museum. Like that's the other thing. I have no answer for that, honestly.
I don't either. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't. I think it just everything in collectibles just comes down to two people really wanting something.
definitely. And Texas Maradona jersey, hands down. Bud, though, says prettiest mantle at the National, prettier than the D-backs PSA 10, which was on display at the collector's booth. This one was also on display at the Heritage booth, the 9.5 min plus. I saw both. Both looked really good. I'm not no vintage expert, so I couldn't pick apart the little details between the two, but both look, stellar gem mint to me. Well, even though that was min plus technically, but it looks amazing. The mantle, which is why it sold for so much, 12.6 million. I want to bring up before we keep on going. Um, you do know the hand of God goal was a supposedly cheated to score the goal. Yes, Joseph. I think that probably the point of the hand of God is that as a handball and then he scored. Um, or correct me, I guess, if I'm understanding that wrong, but I've seen it before and stuff and looked it up. But back to this really quick here. So I was just going to point out the other highest sales of all time before moving into the rest of the cards we're going to look at. So this just beat out the recently selling SGC 2 Honus Wagner that sold for 7.25 million on a private sale on August 4th, which was announced after we already knew that this mantle was up for auction. It was sitting at like $5 to $6 million. So that stood for 25 days as expected. And then the mantle beat that. But before that, it was last year, August 15th, an SGC 3 Honus Wagner sold for 6.6 million, which is $700,000 less than the SGC 2 just sold for recently. Really showing how much the high end market is still moving today. And then the other two sales, which were tied as the most expensive sales of all time before all the Honus Wagner sold, was the exquisite LeBronov 23 BGS 9 of the 10 auto, the most expensive modern card ever at 5.2 million. And then the 52 tops Mickey Mantle base PSA 9 that Rob G bought for 5.2 million on January 14th, 2021. So just some
I
context there.
Hey, I have a question for you.
And
What's the first $20 million card?
I mean, if the PSA 10 mantle comes out, I mean, you have to assume it hit $20 million.
Okay, now here's my next question. We've had multiple people come in here and say that this 9.5 was as good as any of those PSA 10s.
Yeah.
So do you really think somebody goes in there and says it would have to be somebody uneducated that is buying it then, right?
So I actually like what you just said because you read comments, you read discussion, and it's, PSA 10 mantle sell for over 20 million. But if the people who are spending 10 to 20 million are, really care about what the card is, look at it, talk to high end people, and those high end people are saying, this SGC 9.5 just is nice. Are they really going to spend $8 million more, especially when there's three of them? There is no SGC 10 mantles. You have to assume, given that this one just sold for 12.6. I don't think it was sold for 12.6 if there was a 10 out there. But yeah, I actually like what you said, and maybe that's a good question for the chat to answer. Do you think that do you think that a PSA 10 mantle would sell for 20 million right now, given that there's a lot of discussion in the high end base that this 9.5 min plus from SGC is just as nice as the three PSA 10s?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the time when you see the PSA label sell for a lot now, a lot of it is the hype train. A lot of it is PSA is the only way, which is definitely not true as we've seen and known. But I like that. Nate, what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I will never have the money to have to worry about a thing like this, but I do think that when you're buying a card that expensive, you kind of gotta these people have to know what they're doing, I
Yeah.
would assume. And if they know what they're doing, then they'll have done the research to know that if this card is just as good, that you don't buy a PSA 10 for 8 million more dollars. Or at least I hope.
Yeah.
So I do think that if the next PSA 10 buyer is intelligent and does the research, it would be close to this. And if it's just somebody who wants bragging rights and just sees PSA 10 and doesn't do the research, then I do think that it could go significantly higher.
I think that's how it hits 20 million because, like you said, if you're spending that much money, you're definitely talking to people who know what they're doing. And I think people who know what they're doing have said a lot that this is the nicest copy that they've seen or one of, just on par with the others. I want to pull up what Matthew Johnson said. Do you think they crack it and submit it to PSA? I sure hope you're not buying a $12 million card to try to crack a case. There is no chance. So much can go wrong, I feel. Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I highly doubt it. I think this card is very important for what it is and how it went up for sale as a 9.5 min plus with the finest known example stuff with it. And I just can't see that gamble for the extra 8 million. I mean, if it looks just as good, you'd think that it would work, but I don't know, man. I think it's a dumb idea regardless. All right, getting on to some other cards here. So the first ones I want to point out, Nate, I threw these in here before we
Okay.
started, was in August on the 18th in the PWCC Premier Auction. There were two Mantle 52s to sell, graded a 3. One an SGC 3, the other a PSA 3. Now, I would have to somehow zoom into this, which honestly, now that I'm using Google Slide presentation, I'm not sure how to zoom in out. I don't think I can because I'm not using a PDF right now. But the
Look at
SG3,
you.
I know I was trying to do something cool because Julian taught me it. Yeah, I'm an old geezer now. I know. The
True.
SG, which means that Nate's probably dead at this point. But
That's also true.
the SGC3 at the top is super nice, like great centering, what you like to see in a low grade vintage card. Sold for 78 grand in the same auction that PSA 3 sold for 66K. Same technical grade, way different in price, $12,000 difference. The PSA 3 is definitely more off center than the SGC 3, which is very, very well centered. So JR said, did they disclose who bought it? I would think someone would brag about buying that. They did not disclose who bought it. They also didn't really do much pumping of the sale when it happened. So I'm assuming that this is kind of like hey, the way a heritage works is definitely more of a like these items just pop up and they sell for a ton of money and then life goes on. Of course, I want to share out that sales value as quick as I could. But I don't know if we'll know who bought this. It doesn't seem like it's meant for that.
I wonder if they don't just spitballing here, and I don't know if that's true. I wonder if they're not gonna broadcast it out until it's confirmed paid for or something.
That I mean, I gotta say, if they're taking bids at $12 million, they know like it's all verified, it's all linked up to their banks. Like that thing is for sure getting paid for. Like, there's no way they're doing just like an open source bidding for that.
No, well, yeah, I get that. It's just
You say
why
what you're
wouldn't
saying.
they? It would be foolish of them to not be pushing it out there as far as they can get it.
Well, they have been now a day later, a day.
Okay.
So it did just hit Times Square. It's on the billboards, all that stuff. But I think what I agree with you on is like they probably want to make sure that the payment was complete. The money went through, all that stuff. There's just no hiccups. Like boom, it's done all the way.
Yeah.
Which I that's respectable, right? Like you want to make sure that that it's all done properly. And Chris, this is a good point. What market are we talking about being affected? The high end market that 99% of us can't afford. You're right, Chris. We can't afford it. 99% of the people in here can't afford it. But
I'd venture to guess that more than 99% can.
99.99%,
Yeah.
0.999 repetitively. But what the point here is, we said that at the beginning of the live stream, is that no, this is not saying that sale is going to make everything explode because the highest card of all time sold. That is not what this is about. It's looking at the differences specifically right here in SGC and PSA vintage cards and looking at how that could maybe swing a needle on one of these two grades versus the other. And then also just thinking about the vintage market in general, because I have to say, the vintage market over the last 3 months has done better than any market. It has done super well. All the numbers are pointing that way. Cards are selling pretty fast volume wise and all that stuff. And I do think that this sale on the vintage card and specifically, it's too early to tell. Like, oh my gosh, has all these different vintage cards sold in the last 3 days since this sold? Not necessarily, but like I think going forward, like either this is going to be the start of the decline of the lower end vintage market because this happens, the build up to the event, the highest selling vintage card of all time, or we see it gain more steam and go ahead is the thing. And back to this thing on the screen really quick, the SGC 3 versus the PSA 3, as we've talked about a few weeks ago, it's always what does the card look like is going to command the value. So Nate, in this case, you brought up, well, if the SGC 9.5 looks just like the PSA 10s, does the PSA 10 really deserve to sell for 20 million? If you compare these same technical grades, the answer would be no. The better SGC 3 is sold for $12,000 more. So if you think it's the same exact looking card, they probably both would have sold for 78,000 or both would have sold for 66,000 in that case.
I agree.
And then turning back the clock to see what they sold for prior to this. Now, this is interesting. This is very interesting. A very good looking SGC 3 on the top there. Maybe a little off center top to bottom. Not a whole lot. Sold for $60,000 on January 27th. The one that sold more recently sold for $78,000. That's $18,000 more. Of course, we're not looking at the exact back of the card. Maybe there's a reason why this one sold for $18,000 more because a certain feature of this card looked that much better. But the PSA 3 that looks pretty similar to the PSA 3 that just sold in August, but back in January sold for $66K, the exact same amount sold for in August of this year, right before the 9.5 Mint Plus sold. You see him getting in here, Nate?
Mm-hmm.
The SGC 3 increased 18 grand. The PSA didn't move in the same amount of time because, well, not because necessarily, but possibly because the 9.5 SGC Mint Plus was selling in August. And I take this brief moment here. We got here pretty quick, actually. I think it's going to come up this quick. I want to point out our Whatnot stream schedule for this week. On Wednesday, Nate is hosting What's Brewing on Whatnot, the app. Make sure to download it if you've not already. We're doing, well, I'm actually going to be on it too, but I'll be in the Netherlands, which I'll bring up next. We are going to be giving away $750 in different boxes of football cards. So we've got some Chronicles Hybrid, we've got some Prism hanger boxes, a lot of fun stuff. And you all should join that to get a little preseason talk and a little excitement for the NFL season coming. And then on Thursday, as of right now, it could be on Saturday. I do not have that exact time. Just be on the lookout for our Formula One stream this week. I am going to be in the Netherlands with Papa Slabs, and we're going to be doing a full giveaway show live from the Netherlands, live from the Dutch Grand Prix. We'll try to do as close to the track as possible. I don't know exactly where we're going to be able to do it yet, but we've got a ton of giveaways, some awesome Lewis Hamilton cards, a bunch of t-shirts, a dual signed hat. We have a sweet Max card, as you see right there. It's going to be a really fun time, and I hope that everyone can make it. So just be on the lookout Thursday, Friday, or Saturday on Whatnot. Look up SlabStox for the giveaway stream.
What kind of food do they have in the Netherlands? Have you looked that up?
I got no idea. They've been so busy. I have no idea what we're doing when we get there. But I'll find out and hopefully find some.
That's rule number one, going anywhere. Find the food. That's my rule number one anyways.
Yep. JR said, is it known who owns the PSA 10s though? Right. I remember one being an owner of a baseball team. Yes, the Diamondbacks owner of the Diamondbacks collection or whatever has got one of the PSA 10s. I don't know who has the others, but there's something here that says that someone spent $500,000 on cards. That is definitely not enough to get a Mickey Mantle PSA 1052.
Maybe the Diamondbacks owner could sell the PSA 10 and afford to actually put a quality product on the field.
Nate, I think we're coming up with some good business ideas there, right?
I think we are too.
Why go to that Grand Prix? Is it the Gasly home race? No, it's not. Pierre Gasly is French, and that already happened. This is the Max Verstappen home race. The reason why we're going now is just because the scheduling worked out best, and also the access we were able to get for this Grand Prix was still available. And we've got some pretty awesome things we'll be able to do there. Go down the pit lane. Hopefully talk to some drivers. It's going to be a really fun time. I'm very excited. All right, Nate, you got some stuff in here. Let's start talking about some lower dollar vintage sales now, which is, this is a good thing to talk about because Chris did bring a valid point. Hey, which markets are we talking about? If it's the high end, none of us can afford it, but this is some $20 and $50 cards right here.
Yeah. And just real quick, this is a one-off little segment before we get into PSA versus SGC. But I just thought it was interesting. I was looking at a bunch of different vintage cards. August 28th, best offer, $55. August 27th, PSA 5, $22. Is it because of the Mantle sale that all of a sudden this random Paul Molitor rookie is higher priced? Not going to say that, but if you go to the next slide, Aaron, this was the highest sale I could find all time for this card in a PSA 5 at $50. I know $5 isn't much, but it was a little bit interesting. The day after that Mantle sells and ends, this card is getting popped for the highest price it's ever been popped for.
Nate, I got to ask you a question. You're someone who isn't like you, who's in baseball cards every day, but you just, you work a different job and you had cards when you were younger, probably some, 50s, 60s, no, probably some 60s, 70s, or 80s cards. Maybe your dad had or mom had some 50s or earlier. And you see on CNN or Forbes or Bloomsburg or Fox or wherever, Times Square, that the highest sale of a sports card ever sold, it's a 52 Mickey Mantle. And you say, oh, that's awesome. How many people do you think saw that, thought of their favorite player, looked up a card online, and was like, hey, I got $50 to spend. I want to get a card like that above my favorite player?
Huge possibility.
Because the thing is when you see sales that are that different in price, 55 versus 22.50, there's a chance that people are buying who do not care that's $30 more. but just want to have the card that's available and that they can get without having to think to go get it later, like 5 days later on an auction. People like us, we're waiting. We know we can go drop those bids. We can find one later, save the searches. There's probably a group of people who maybe just went and looked up a card like that, Topps card, and bought it because it's the cheapest price available of a reasonable grade or something.
Yeah,
So I
which
like that. That's a good example, Nate.
is nice to be the owner of those cards at this point.
For
But
sure.
I thought it was cool because it was one of the few examples I could find that higher than any other price. And again, not an expensive card, but I didn't think that just centering could cause a card to go $30 higher than the day before, for something that cheap.
Yeah, right.
So let's get into it. We have Aaron alluded to this earlier, and we've got a lot of SGC compared to PSA prices here. And so what we're kind of trying to see is, huge SGC card just sold. PSA and SGC are kind of, at least in my mind, and probably a lot of other people's minds, the 1 and 2 graders now. I know there's going to be a lot of Bowman Chrome guys that say BGS all the way. I'd rather die than put a Bowman Chrome card into anything but a BGS slab. And to them, I say, well, you're losing money because everywhere we go, it's like, what is BGS doing? Why are they doing that?
I have people ask me, are they even going to be relevant in the
Yeah.
years coming? And that's been asked for a while now.
So for me, PSA, SGC, top of the list. BGS, a far distant third at this point.
Can I talk about something? I'm going to take as little time as possible right now, but I want to bring up the differences in value or the differences in cost of grading if you submit vintage cards to PSA or SGC, because I think I'll give good context here looking at the prices of each as we go. So if you submit a vintage card to PSA that is $1,000 or higher, or sorry, $1,000 or lower, you can grade it for $50. If you submit it and it's $5,000, sorry, $2,500 to $5,000, it would be $300. There's a couple different prices in there, but just keep in mind $2,500 to $5,000 is $300. If you submit a card to SGC that is between $2,500 and $5,000, it's probably around $125 to grade it. Their pricing tier is a little bit different. Now, if you go all the way up to say, hey, Nate, if you would have graded that mantle with SGC, the 9.5, it would have cost you $3,750 to grade the mantle with SGC. If you go to PSA, hey, what if I graded the mantle with PSA? $10,000, over double the price. And then if you look at something that, what do you say?
I said almost triple the price.
Right. And then let's just say you go and you look at something that's more like the SGC 3 and the PSA 3 mantle we looked at, $2,000, actually $3,000 to PSA. Through SGC, it would have been $2,000. So still $1,000 price difference there. So keep in mind going forward, if you are to submit these cards and try to think about it that way, I know not everyone's buying a Mantle 52 Raw, but just bring up some context. And last thing, Bud just reminded me of it. Can't trust BGS to authenticate cards, unfortunately. BGS, between the three companies that Nate just brought up, does not have a guarantee on their grades. If they grade something that's found to be fake, they do not pay out the value difference in what what the value of the card's worth versus now it being fake and worth $0. They would not cover the card. PSA and SGC both do. So there's a massive difference in companies to where buying a BGS graded mantle is by no means a safe bet. And I would not do it in any way or shape or form. Or even modern cards. We just heard about the Curry 2 days ago. Remember? The Curry that got, cracked out, BGS 9 sent to PSA. They sent it back as trimmed, but BGS authenticated. So now, you're out of luck.
Yep.
All right. I'll let Nate get going here now.
All right. So keeping in mind that there is some slight price difference here, is it just a $20 price difference on these grades?
You're saying if you were to grade this specific card, yeah, it's $20. You're paying $30 for SGC's website to grade the Killer Brew versus $50 on PSAs,
and no upcharge.
Yeah. That is based on the value of the card.
Okay. So then we want to go and we want to check the SGC sold card and then find PSA equivalents and see if we can find anything. So SGC 6 of this Harmon Killer Brew 1955 tops, $475, August 29th. August 28th, a 5.5, $430. And of course, again, the caveat being centering and all that stuff has to plays into these grades, and we can't really get that zoomed in on these to be able to tell.
Not to mention, it would take a while to nitpick every single detail of the card to figure out what people would pay for more for. But also, this is a 6 versus a 5.5. Keep that in mind too.
Correct. So then if you go to the next page, a 6 versus a 6, and there is your $30 difference there. $505 for the PSA 6, $475 for the SGC 6. So if you grade it with PSA, you're netting 10 extra dollars. But at least for me, the amount of time it takes to get graded might be worth saying no to that $10 and getting it sold.
I was going to bring that up too, because I didn't say that, okay, it's $50 to grade this Killer Brew through PSA, but that would have taken you 6 months. Through SGC, it would have taken you 5 days. So the huge time difference there, huge time savings and everything. But even if, I mean, that's still very similar in value, pretty much commanding the same price. For both holders, the same grade.
To be
Matthew
fair,
Johnson,
when that PSA 6, that looks like an old old holder, so it might have taken 6 days back then too.
Good one, Nate. Matthew Johnson said, only bad thing about SGC, I had a card return since it didn't have a slab big enough, which didn't make sense since it was a football NTRPA. Matthew, I got to point this on this. I actually just talked to SGC on the phone today about this because we had a card in our submission for someone that came back and said too thick to holder. The way that this happens, and they're working actively right now to make sure this doesn't happen going forward, is that the card that you submitted was actually a little bit bigger than the standard size of that same specific card from the same specific set, all that stuff. They have graded tons of NTRPAs. You can go look them up. They're out there. I submitted a card as well of ours, a hockey card, a couple months ago or a month or two ago, and it came back the same way, too large, cannot hold her. If it's a little bit taller, they can't hold her based on the size of the slabs, all that stuff. So they're actively working right now to make sure that if a card comes in that's authentic from the manufacturer, all that stuff, and it does have like a millimeter bigger on the top edge, or it's a little bit thicker, that it can get slabbed or the patch sticks out of the window a little bit more. It's not necessarily that they don't grade those types of cards. It's just that specific card exactly. So hopefully, that happens a very small amount, but in the future, I know what they said they're going to fix it as quickly as possible. So good to know that.
Cool. Nice to know they are adjusting.
Definitely.
So 1956 Sandy Koufax Whiteback SGC 6.5 sold $750 August 29th. And I know this is half a month earlier, but same card PSA 6 sold August 12th, $589.99. Pretty significant difference, obviously half a grade lower. And then you have the half a grade higher PSA 7 that sold for $912. Pretty close to the exact same difference in price for that half grade between the two.
Very close. I want to mention one thing. Sorry, then I'll stop. I want to reiterate to Matthew that they also do not charge if that happens. Like if the holder is not big enough to fit that card, they wouldn't charge you for the grading of that card. They'd send it back without charging, just to make sure that's clear, so that people don't think that they're not grading it and keeping the money.
And then SHN MRA ARI says thoughts on PSA and SGC grading standards. You always hear how hard PSA's grading standards has risen over the years. That was a thing for a while, and I was like, we had an outstanding sub for like a year and a half at PSA, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna get butchered. And then I think I got like 73% PSA 10s, which doesn't seem like it's uber hard. So I don't know what to make of that, because I did hear that rumor too, and then we get back our own sub, and I was expecting it to get murdered, and it didn't.
I'll talk about this for a little bit. So back when they shut down all the grading, had to hire a ton of new graders to get through the backlog and new incoming submissions for super, super expensive values. I think that they threw graders out there way too early. Dude, the grades were so inconsistent. Cards that others thought would get 10s were coming back 8s. All this stuff, people, what SHN said was pretty much true at the time, was that their standards were like going whack, no consistency, which is actually what made me sit there and think, oh man, this is actually pretty darn lame. You're paying someone a ton of money and you're getting back cards that are completely off from what you see, what others see who have graded a ton of cards as well. It makes no sense. And now recently, you're right, Nate, there has been, I feel like, a lot more people saying, well, PSA is just grading everything a 10. And then other people say, well, no, my cards I think are 10s or 9s. I just think there's not enough consistency. I have to say, I've sent in a lot of cards to SGC in the last 6 months, ever since I really felt like that, all that stuff happening. The consistency is amazing. Cards I see, I think are 9s or getting 9s, think that they're getting 9.5s, 9.5s, 10s, 10s. Obviously, sometimes can't be right all the time. And maybe they're not right all the time. I mean, every company has their downfalls when it comes to cards that get graded, maybe undergraded, overgraded. But
sometimes we send in cards that I think are low grades and you think are high grades, and then they come back from SGC low grades. Jordan Lawler, cough, cough.
How about Jude Bellingham? I thought that was a high grade guy, 10.
It's true.
You thought it was a low grade. So I guess we both have one on each other there. And then JR, why is there such a stigma with cards graded less than a 10? I literally heard someone at a show ask someone what they had in 10s only. I feel like if you don't have a 10, it's worthless. That is a very, very not true thing in my mind. I know that others do think that, though. I've also heard people say, if it's not a 10, I don't want it. I think that is not a great way to go about it, especially in today's market. If you do think that way, you will end up spending money that you shouldn't on cards that are not worth it, or you will close off yourself to like 75% of the market, which is a really bad idea in my mind.
Especially for cards that are already serial numbered. Like the scarcity is already baked in, and then you're gonna say, no, I'm not gonna buy a SGC 8 or PSA 8 or a BGS 8 because like if it's a gold, I'll take any gold, any orange, any red.
I agree with you. And then I'll take it one step further, Nate, that once you say that, well, serial number cards, it's like, yeah, you're buying because of the card. The non-numbered cards have done very poorly in the last 2 years to the point where people don't even really want them unless they are like a super short print color blast type of thing, So at that point, It's like, well, why does the pop report matter as much? Which I would say it doesn't, as serial number cards and autographs are so much more important now.
Also, if you like a card, like I was telling Aaron yesterday, I've been having a lot of fun with Udoka Azubuike, low numbered cheap stuff. And for me, I mean, most of it's not graded anyways, because who's grading Udoka Azubuike? But besides that, if I had a choice between a PSA 10 or a PSA 8, and I could get a PSA 8 for my collection for half the price, of a PSA 10, guaranteed I'm buying that PSA 8. I don't need it to be a 10 to be in my collection.
Definitely.
Don't care at all.
Great point, Nate. And actually, I'm just going through something similar right now. Graded, now 2 sets just about fully graded of the Stranger Things season 4 promos, deciding which one I'm going to hang on the wall, which one I'll sell later down the line. I'm going to be completely content with keeping all the lowest graded ones. I don't need I only hit 110 out of 30 cards. That's how hard they are to grade. Nancy got a 10. And I'm totally fine with having the lowest grade one.
Really?
Bro, I don't know what your beef is with Nancy, but we don't have to get into that right now.
Season 1. You remember Nancy from season 1? That's my beef with Nancy.
Yeah, but season 1 is goated, so it doesn't matter.
She let her friend die.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, season 1. But guess what? She lives and she learns. Ends of season 4. She's freaking awesome. So, but Nate holds a grudge the whole time, so it doesn't matter what happens.
I do.
All right, jumping back into this right now. And JR, of course, you're welcome. Anyone who wants to answer or ask questions, feel free to go ahead. And anyone can also help pitch in and give information too. We're not the only information suppliers out there. Obviously, we love for other people to give their thoughts as well. And he says, JR says, love what you guys do for the collector. We try our best. We do try very hard to make the hobby a great place for collectors everywhere.
All right, so moving on, we've got my favorite vintage card ever created, and that's because I got to hold one in my hands, and it was awesome, like the raw copy in my hands. 1953 top Satchel Paige SGC 1 sold for $500. Aaron, what did our SGC 1.5 sell for?
It got like 600 or 575.
Okay. And then a PSA.
Oh,
sorry. I've been doing pretty well. A PSA 1 sold also $500 fixed price one day earlier, which I thought was pretty interesting. I do think there's a second example on the next page.
Yep, a 1.5.
A 1.5. Sold for $500 August 20th. So like sometimes these grades don't really matter because somebody paid the same price for a PSA 1 as a 1.5 8 days later.
And that all goes back to what does the card look like? That PSA 1 could look better than the 1.5, but PSA thought 1.5 should have had a higher grade. Like it's just people who do buy vintage. I do think, and Nate, you brought this up earlier 3 weeks ago. What happens if uneducated people are buying vintage and they're just buying based on the grade, like modern? Yeah, it could sway the numbers, but I do think that vintage card collectors for years and years and years, super educated, super technical with how they're buying cards, what they're buying, and why. So I do very much so admire vintage collectors and everything.
And
And what, Nate?
well, I mean, you held that satchel page, right? You saw how good the color was. Um, and it's like that type of thing that until you kind of submerge yourself in it a little bit, until you like get to know that, it's hard to know anything about this stuff until you're in it yourself. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, this color pops off this card so well. I don't care if it's centered. I don't care if there's paper loss on the back. It looks so good.
Yeah, I have to say, Nate, I was going through all the SGC submissions that got submitted today, the last day for 8:30 submission. And Shipley said, thanks to you guys overnight my shipment, and you helped answer my questions and got checked in today. We are trying to provide the best customer service that's out there for submissions. Everything's been checked in so far for the submission sent out, all that stuff. But I want to say I opened up a package, 5 modern cards and 1 vintage card coming from one order. 5 modern cards, some football modern, your Trey Lance, run of the mill stuff. The 6th one, Walter Payton rookie. I looked at
Ooh,
that and I said,
76.
yeah. And it wasn't that, it was not high grade. Okay. I'm talking like off center, rounded corners, all that stuff. But you look at that card and you say, I know this is the Walter Payton card. You look at that Trey Lance and you go, that looks like the $50,000 Trey Lance card that's been made this year.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of like, I mean, I had some vintage cards in my collections for years now, but that's like a moment of realization where it's like you can get that 56 Jackie or 56 Aaron or 54 Aaron rookie and say, I have the card, regardless of if it's a 1, 3, 7, 10. There's 2 or 1 or 2 10s out there, but I don't care. I have the card. You look at the other ones and it's like, do you have the card? I don't know. I mean, I do know, and
Yeah.
you do too, what the sought after stuff is, but people who just pick it up, you're like, I don't know what this is, right? Like,
Have you ever seen the gas monkey? I think they're called gas monkey guys. Own a
no.
garage, and they fix up old cars, but they don't remove rust. They don't paint over them. They don't make them look new or anything. They keep all the flaws because they want it to be, if they're driving around a 1960s Plymouth, they want it to be looking like a 1960s Plymouth in 2022, just drivable.
Right.
And as somebody who would take out his cards as a little 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, and touch them and put them back in the box and sort them all the time by set, by team, sorted 10 ways till Sunday type of thing. They're all in terrible shape now. And I think that, modern cards, yeah, I want them in good shape, but like vintage, I almost feel there's more of an appeal to me if there is flaws.
I've actually thought that myself too in the past. I'm very happy with Hankering 3 rookie, and mine is very centered. I have to say what Thomas Wright says is true. Centering is king in vintage. It definitely is, but so is color. Nate brought up like the whole color thing. At least from an eye appeal aspect, in my opinion, right? Like I'm not a huge vintage collector, so I don't want to answer for the entire vintage market. But in my mind, color and centering. If those two things look good, you have a nice card regardless of if there's a crease in it, the edges are destroyed, the corners are destroyed. I just think it's awesome. Should probably move on to the next card, right?
Yeah, we 9 minutes till an hour. Um, Willie Mays Grayback SGC 4 from 1956 tops, $470, and the Willie Mays PSA 4 Grayback, 9 days earlier, $500, and then a PSA 3 $445. So a full grade difference. The same grade, $30 more, a full grade lower, $25 less.
I gotta say that 445 sale is so close to the PSA 4 versus 3 that definitely that 3 probably oversold a lot of the other 3s out there because that is really, really close, like in price for a full grade difference. But still, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then I put this one in here, Nate, because I found something similar. An SGC 5.5 August 28th, 2022. Sold for $1,320 on PWCC. And then on Heritage on June 26th, a Willie Mays 55 PSA 5.5, the same technical grade. So for the same exact price, different platform, $1,320. I don't know if you are sensing the trend, but we can talk about towards the end, Nate. But to me, SGC and PSA, they're literally on the same exact playing field vintage wise.
Yeah.
Like,
And we might just want to cruise through these just so,
yeah.
because I do have some questions for you about this.
Oh, and then lastly, the one that just sold a night ago, I know it had the top 30%. Sold for like $700, or sorry, $600 more than it sold for last October. Same exact 5.5 grade.
Wow. Roger Maris, 1958 Topps rookie SGC 4 at $336 on auction. The PSA 4, this is where it kind of gets interesting. August 29th, a day later, $420 on auction. So that's a pretty drastic difference there. But the 2 days earlier, PSA 4, August 26th, best offer, $350, which is much more in line.
Yeah, it could be any specific reason why someone want to pay more on that specific copy.
Yeah. And that one was actually verified. Beautiful card here, 52 Jackie Robinson.
Love it.
I would love to have this card one day.
I was gonna buy one 3 years ago, a PSA 1 or 2, I think, for like $1,000. I should have.
Oh, oh,
I know.
missed chance. Not that you would have sold it. So
yeah, well, I probably wouldn't have sold it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
But SGC 2, $5,160, August 28th, and PSA 2, $6,000, August 21st. And there's probably a drastic difference there in grading price. And then PSA 1.5, $4,330, August 22nd. And I thought this one was interesting. Just kind of. I just wanted to bring it up because it's such a massive card. $114,000 for an SGC 8 on Heritage the other day. And this is one that I don't really understand. So I know it got the PWCCE.
Yeah.
But a PSA 8 2 months earlier for $150,000 more dollars, or $160,000 more dollars.
I saw this and I was like, what? Like, this is crazy. I could not believe this was actually an example here, because everything else, even the higher end stuff, very level playing field. Or in some cases, SGC, depending on if the eye appeal is better, sells for more. I see this and I looked at that Jackie right here. Dude, that card looks great. I know it looks small to me right now, but that, like, the centering looks really, really good on that. And the only thing that I can sit here and think of is that maybe more people were distracted with some other card a night ago, the Mickey Mantle.
Heritage.
Yep, on Heritage, then a Jackie Robinson, and then also the whole, top 15% eye appeal from PWCC. It does make a price difference. If you are selling vintage, they do free eye appeal appraisals and put the stickers on the cards that they put in the top 30, 15, and 5%. It does help the prices a lot if you do get that designation. But if it's me, dude, give me that SGC 8, 10 out of 10 times, whatever. I mean, that is such a good deal.
I will take 2 of those SGC 8s and $50,000.
Seriously, that was it seems like a steal compared to this PSA 8. I have to look at more, data to see if it actually was a steal, but either way, at least compared to that PSA 8, definitely a deal.
Though I wouldn't scoff if somebody wanted to give me the PSA 8.
I wouldn't.
1952 Jackie Robinson. 1952 Jackie Robinson.
I agree there.
And then last couple, not huge huge cards here. SGC 2.5, August 28th, $264 for 1959 Mantle. 1959 Mantle on PWCC Weekly, August 28th, 2022. Again, auction for PSA 3, $408.
Yeah, and definitely a lot of difference in centering on that one. Can easily see that.
You can see the centering, how atrocious it is, both side to side and top to bottom on the 2.5 above.
Yeah, that's all shoved in the corner.
Yep. And then the PSA 3, $306, which I thought was interesting because you can see the centering is bad on that one, and it's significantly closer to the price.
Yeah, it is. That is very different. I mean, that's pretty close for a half-point grade difference, but it is because of that centering issue, and that's what we've been talking about so much.
And then I think this is the last one. Roberto Clemente, 1956 Topps Whiteback SGC 3, $290. The PSA 2, July 31st, $222.
This I do think is a lot. You might have the same slide twice. Oh, then there's a 2.5.
And then a 2.5. I don't think I could find a PSA 3. Um, and then 2.5, $310, August 26th. Make
And
of that what
then
you will.
yeah, that is the end. All right.
Yep.
What do you got, Nate? Big idea wise.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
What? You
My,
okay?
my my brain is failing me.
Oh, I was like, are you hurt? He had a
Um,
huge idea.
yeah, oh man, I had a good question for you. Crap. Oh boy. Here, you start and then maybe I'll think of it.
Okay, I got it. So there's a lot of comments in the beginning. Oh, this sale does nothing for the market. It's just, high end, going up, ultra high end. The big high end people probably celebrate. All that 9.5 min plus sells for 12.6. I'm sure that PSA 9 at 5.2 is super excited about that. All that different stuff. I do think it has actually a lot to do with the lower side of the market. Not that I think that where there's like the two sides of the fence, like some people are like, oh, this is going to make everything so valuable. And then other people are like, no, it's not. It's just a high end card. But I think it's somewhere in the middle. This is very, very, very important when something like this sells for the overall publicity of the sports card market. Nate texted me the night that sold. This is going to be literally on every single news channel. You look up a day or two later, it's on every single news channel that you can think of. You can pretty much type in Mickey Mantle 12.6 and you'll get all these different links from ESPN, Fox, like I said, NBC, whatever, CNN you want to say. Um, and that does something for sure. It definitely makes people think. When we had COVID and all the different cards were getting reported on, going up in crazy in price, The Last Dance. I know I've heard firsthand accounts. So many people, The Last Dance came out, they open up their closet and try to find their Michael Jordan cards. How many people are opening up their closet and trying to find their older vintage baseball cards? Probably a lot right now. You get this card to sell, and people say, well, what are mine worth? And it happens all the time. And then they go look it up. Maybe someone gets interested. Maybe someone joins the hobby. It is really important. It is a really big deal. I don't want to sit here and say it's going to make everything more valuable because it's not. And I'm not going to say that because that'd be dumb to say that. But I do think that's important. I just don't want to, downplay the importance of that, regardless of which case it's in. Although huge W for SGC, they now have the three highest selling cards of all time: the 9.5 Mantle, the 2 Mantle, and the 2 Wagner and the 3 Wagner are all in SGC cases.
All right, I remembered it.
Yep.
So shout out me. Shout out to my brain. Usually I use my wife as my brain. Anytime I need to remember something, I ask her. And if she doesn't know, I ask Aaron. And if she doesn't know, then it's lost forever. Um, but we know SGC, cut their teeth on vintage grading. That's how they were known. That's how they got known.
25 plus years. A lot of people think SGC new. No, not new. A long time here.
And a lot of that buildup of trust is why people like SGC for vintage, and that's why the prices are as close as they are compared to PSA counterpoints. My question is, we know that for vintage. Do you think this sale is going to maybe boost SGC in modern now? Because vintage was always there. And we just looked at vintage and it's always been there. But Tom was just telling me, Tom Wright, shout out, that the other day he was selling, or he had some PSA graded Star Wars slabs, and the guy turned him down because he only wanted SGC graded Star Wars slabs. You would never have heard that a year ago.
No.
So I am curious because, like, while I enjoy going through these and seeing how close the prices are and saying, hey, SGC PSA kind of even on the vintage playing field, it's kind of expected from me anyways, because I know how they got their start. I am more curious on your thoughts on if this will help modern catch up.
Yes, great question. I want to look up something here as I talk about this. I heard from C Blez. Shout out to C Blez, by the way, huge donor for SlabStox and Cam Kesem charity event this year. Did an awesome job supplying a lot of product. He posted something that was saying that there's talk about out there about what Nate's question was: is modern going to close the gap with SGC prices versus PSA? And first of all, like I said, look at the last 2 years; it's closed the gap a ton. It is by far and away so much higher for SGC compared to or PSA, like the percentage difference than it's really ever been. More people are grading the SGC now than really ever, with barring the last 3 months it's
We
been
can
around there.
confirm that.
I
How many
can't
cards did we get this month?
Yeah, 3,000 in August. 3,000 cards, and that's only with promotion, for like promotion meaning even talking about it, for about 25 days. We really just jumped on the scene. It wasn't like, hey, this is coming in August. It just jumped on the scene. 3,000 cards, huge cards too. Multi-$1,000 cards like crazy, and smaller cards too, because for $23 a card, it's a great price to get cards great and turn around in 5 days. But I'm looking here. I want to look at the last select field level silver of Justin Herbert PSA 10 versus SGC 10, because let's just say that's like a benchmark for a card in the market. The last PSA 10 silver of Herbert, non-numbered, obviously sold for $1,000 of that card, the field level. You go and look at the last SGC 10 to sell. They don't sell as frequently. That just more people have graded that card with PSA. But the last one was $675. So this capacity, yes, the PSA 10 of that Herbert card is much more valuable than the SGC 10 of the Herbert card. Now, the things that aren't seen there is the whole difference in cost of grading, the turnaround time. Can you get a 9.5 versus a 9 is a major thing in my book. The fact that you can get an SGC 9.5 and they actually do sell for very respectable values, which is higher than PSA now on so many cards, it's a massive difference, because with PSA, if you don't get that 10, you're probably going to lose your grading fee and money on a ton of the cards you grade. And then it's going to play a difference in what people think going forward while grading. And then on top of that, just to answer the question with you're saying specifically, is the gap going to close just in card values with SGC versus PSA? With me, I've seen that gap shrink a lot because of the amount of different rare and unique cards that I've been grading over the last 6 months. The biggest price discrepancy comes in the cards that are not that rare. They're not that sought after in a collector sense, are the ones that sell the furthest discrepancy in price between PSA and SGC. You get a card that's numbered, that people want for their collection, that they value highly, that is hard to find. It's going to sell very well in an SGC slab. I do think this is going to do well for the modern market for SGC. We'll get it up to an equal playing field on the non-numbered modern Justin Herbert select field level silver. Maybe not right away, a year from now, maybe. But all I gotta say is that 10s are not gimmies with SGC. If it's a 10, it's a really good card, because we did get, people got a lot of 10s in our submission that we did, the August 15th one. But you could tell that it's a lot of 9.5s too. Get that 10, it's actually a big boost, I think. It's harder to get, and I think eventually you'll see it command the value, especially the pristine gold labels. Can I also say we graded, now that was around 1,100 cards with the 815 submission, not one gold label, 1,100 cards, Nate, not one pristine gold label.
Not in that box. Never mind. Was going to grab my Aaron Ashby gold label.
I got you. I've got an 11 sticker gold label, actually. The one I pulled. I bought it back from the guy that I pulled it from.
Sorry.
But okay, I just gave my thoughts. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't know. You've been in this longer than me, so I wanted to hear your thoughts on it. I think obviously any recognition is good recognition, and getting your slab, even if they don't mention SGC by name or anything in the article, just having people see it and say, graded 9.5 by who is that? Maybe one in every 10,000 people that sees an article looks it up. That's still a positive.
And also, I have to say, they probably are for sure mentioning SGC's name and how they graded and all that stuff. Like, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, worst case scenario, let's just say they say nothing about, you see that slab, you'll recognize it later. That's what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah.
I agree with you for sure. And SHN MRA ARA, submitting my first 10 cards with you guys right now. SlabStox.com/grading. Thank you so much for doing that. And like I said, continuous submissions will be rolling with SGC. And obviously, we are speaking from the perspective of being an SGC group submitter. I am, at least. And I know Nate too, obviously, is part of that, just in a different state. The whole thing here is that, like, I have a lot of PSA cards in the other room. I have not ripped all my cards out of PSA cases. I'm definitely not doing that. But from a perspective of value and all that stuff, where our heart lies with the whole SGC value play and the quick turnaround times. But we'll still analyze the market, objectively with all the sales data, or at least we'll do our best to do that. And you all can help out and supply your thoughts too.
Yep.
And also, yep, right here, big takeaway now is that SGC slash CGC pretty much overtaking BGS. Yeah, BGS is so left in the dust. Like they are so left in the dust right now. Nate, what would people say all the time? Last thing here, what will people say all the time for why BGS is still relevant? I don't know if you have the exact answer, but
Uh, from what I see, it's because they're antiquated and always graded with BGS, so they'll only ever grade with BGS.
yeah, no, that's a good thought as well. But I was gonna say some of the biggest cards of all time have been graded by BGS, and you look, 2013, 2009, 2008. How many big cards are getting graded with them now? Not that
There,
many.
there are a few, but I get your point. I mean, it was all the way up to like 2018. You'll see a lot of Luis Robert. You'll see a lot of, Juan Soto, Ronald Acuna, BGS 9.5
Yeah, and you're looking at it
slab.
from a Bowman Chrome perspective too. I get, but
Yeah.
either
But you
either
do
way,
not see that many Bowman Chrome cards graded by BGS nowadays.
no, seriously, yeah, there's a clear difference there. And Ed, we hope you are doing great as well. Thanks for popping in tonight. I hope everyone had a great time watching the show. Shout out to everyone that has came tonight. It's been a fun time talking about the Mantle sale. And then I also want to point out this because this is a good point here from Yui. Tens across all grading companies that are big now are becoming difficult. PSA has been notorious for lack of tens. Several major submitters who average a 50 to 60% gem rate now average half that. So I guess it's a crapshoot to say the least. Hopefully you got some good looking cards, I guess, is what it comes down to. But I will say on our end, like I said, the consistent grading is such a big positive for SGC in my eyes. What I see generally is what it's going to get. And like I said, I don't know everything. I've graded well over 1,000 cards in my life. So I've seen a lot, but yeah, I mean, I guess test out for yourself to see is what it comes down to. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight's show. The next time we will be live is going to be on YouTube here Sunday night, 9:45 p.m. Eastern time for the Flip Quest. But be sure to check out our streams throughout this week on Whatnot, as Nate will be going live with me for the What's Brewing, and then I'll be going live from the Netherlands at the Dutch Grand Prix to give away a ton of Formula One items, cards, signed stuff. It's going to be a fun time. I hope you all can join. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will see you all there.